Conversation with a Geographer. I'm Mike DeVivo, professor of geography at Grand Rapids Community College. And today we are very fortunate to have Lary Dilsaver, professor emeritus from the University of South Alabama. Larry will be joining us talking about his background, his career, and hopefully a lot about historical geography. Larry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure, Mike.
Larry, as I start many of these interviews, I ask the people interviewed to talk about what inspired them to pursue geography, if they can reflect upon their childhood or something like that. What might have gotten you interested in geography? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I was born in 1949 in Oakland, California, and grew up in the East Bay. And I went to what was then Cal State Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's Cal State East Bay. And I started out as an anthropology major, but that lasted only one quarter. And then I took a course from Kit Salter, Introduction to Geography. And I had been in a motorcycle accident and had a broken leg and a cast. And the field trip was mandatory for that trip. So Salter came and picked me up in his sports car. I got into it somehow, and he ran through the whole field trip with just me. And then I went on, and took a bunch of more coursework. I took some courses from Tom Vail, who was important in terms of my interest in the ecology and the natural resources. And then when it came time to graduate, I started looking around for what to do. And worked for a little while, and then went back to grad school and did a thesis under William L. Thomas Jr., who edited Man's Role in Changing the Face of the Earth, and did a master's thesis on international tourism. And then he was on sabbatical, and I listened to the other faculty, and they said, "You should go to LSU." So I did.
Did Salter encourage you to consider LSU as well?
No, it was the faculty at what was then Hayward. Herb Eder and Tom Pagenhart and a couple of other people there. Thomas, I was not in touch with Thomas. He wanted me to go to the University of Hawaii and study tourism. But I had also taken a lot of history, and I became interested in historical geography. And so they advised me to try LSU, and where I worked with Sam Hilliard, and did a dissertation on the aftermath of the California Gold Rush. And then got out, looked around for a job, was offered a job by the CIA, but I didn't take it, and wanted an academic job, and South Alabama came through, and so there I went, not knowing that I would spend most of the rest of my life there. Anyway.
Let's talk about your time at LSU, though, because the time you were at LSU working under Hilliard, he had a number of exemplary students, and LSU was really known as one of the more significant entrepôts for historical geography at the graduate level. And can you comment about the manner in which Hilliard carried on his teaching and his advising, and also other students that you were at LSU with who might have influenced you?
Well, it was kind of interesting. When we came in, there were 5 new PhD students coming into the department, and Dr. Robert West had us in a kind of a welcome to geography program thing.
And he would always wear those Converses, right? Every day.
Anyway. And so,
Converse All-Stars.
I was the only one that finished. The other 4, well, they may correct me if they're still out there somewhere, but I lost touch with the other 4 who started in with me. Who else? You were there toward the end, but anyway, I kind of, everybody was working on topics either in the South or a number of them with Bill Davidson working in Honduras and Central America. I was kind of a loner out there, still working in California doing that work, and had a lot of contact with the history department. And that's how I got into doing the dissertation that I did. When I went looking for a job, South Alabama needed somebody to teach, believe it or not, climatology and meteorology. So I applied anyway, but I also taught geography of tourism, which they were interested in. So, and then it was later that I started courses in historical geography of the United States, and then what became my research topic, which of course was conservation of the national parks. And in 1985, I came back from spending the summer in California, and there was a letter in the AAG newsletter that used to be, of course, in paper, from the Bureau Historian of the National Park Service, a guy by the name of Barry McIntosh. And he said that he thought that historical geographers could help with this program they had, which was called Administrative Histories.
Sure.
So I phoned him within 15 minutes of seeing that. And he was always at his office and always answered the phone. I said, has anybody done Sequoia or Kings Canyon? Those are two big parks in the southern Sierra.
Sure. Beautiful parks, too.
I had spent much time with my friends in high school and thereafter going to Yosemite, to Sequoia, Kings Canyon, and Lassen, and all those big national parks in California. It was a great love of mine. And my sister and her husband had just come back from Sequoia when I got this. And he said, no, nobody has done Kings Canyon or Sequoia either. And that started it. And so I was signed up as a volunteer in park for the National Park Service.
Yeah.
And I went to Sequoia and did a bunch of research, fell in with a PhD historian that was the chief of interpretation there, and we put out my first book on Sequoia Kings Canyon called Challenge of the Big Trees in 1990. Since that time, I've done 4 more administrative histories and about 40 articles on parks, national, mostly
That's
on the
great.
national parks.
Let's talk about Yosemite and Sequoia and Kings Canyon just for a moment, because they're remarkable landscapes, and the park is administered a little differently, it seems, in terms of the manner in which tourists have access to some magnificent sights. It seems like in Yosemite, the tourists don't have to work very hard to get some magnificent views of the falls, of a number of the peaks. Whereas in Sequoia, you have to work hard. You have to do about a 7-10 mile hike, and then you're out there with nobody else around, and you're really captivated by these amazing views.
Yeah. Well, the parks are structured slightly differently. Yosemite Valley, of course, the main attraction is the valley.
Yes.
Which is at 4,000 feet, and the cliffs around it are over 7,000. And it's sheer cliffs, glacially carved canyon. And the high country is only visited by perhaps 4% of the visitors that go there. Everybody else concentrates in the valley and overcrowds it now seriously. You pretty much have to almost have reservations to go over that.
Yeah.
Sequoia and Kings Canyon was established, of course, for the big trees, and Sequoia was technically the second national park. It was 1 week ahead of Yosemite and General Grant, which became Kings Canyon later on. The high country in those two parks were added later, but in initially, the attraction, of course, was the giant sequoias. And you can get right into the middle of those without much trouble by going up the General's Highway into Grant, or either in Grants Grove or Giant Forest. And then, of course, you get into the high country and, you know, the eastern boundaries of Mount Whitney, which is the highest thing in the lower 48 states.
Mm-hmm. But you were talking, you continued to do quite a bit of research associated with national parks, and you said something like 70 articles. Is that what you mentioned?
No, about 40.
40. That's
40
still
articles and book chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have 7 books published plus a picture of the sequoia, and they are all feature stuff about national parks, or they're edited volumes in which I have chapters. I edited them and then have chapters about parks. Mm-hmm. So it has been my, you know, as I used to room with Craig Colville at the AAG, and I would always tell the geographers, I work only at the best places. And since he worked on toxic waste and that kind of stuff, I only work in the worst. Anyway,
so you have this this manuscript on the Channel Islands now.
It's out.
And
the book is out.
Right.
And it came out it's technically out in January, but I had it the month before, and I passed out flyers about it. It's I would say one other thing in terms of my background. I worked when I was an undergraduate. I was in a course selection as an undergraduate that dealt with resource management. And then when I went on to the master's program, I did tourism. But then I did historical geography of the West. And all of a sudden, these administrative histories were like the historical geography of resource management and tourism in special places. And it seems like it was planned, but it wasn't. And anyway, I would say that what got me into this topic for my whole career so far was that I was always focused on the relationship between humans and their environment. And this was a place, this was a system that had a radically different approach, in that the natural environment was supposed to remain, as the law says, unimpaired for future generations. That's not how it works outside the parks. And it fascinated me, and I became very, very interested in the workings of how this system functions with all the threats against its environment and its existence. And so it's carried me on for all these years. And I have enjoyed, I've been to places, I've been in parks when the government was shut down and seen amazing stuff.
That's great. And I mean, you've really had a great career in addressing this very much needed piece of research that I'm hoping you'll continue despite your retired status, because you have the toolkit to engage in this sort of research, but also you seem to have the ability to engage in dialogue with those from different agencies and different perspectives. You know, in our graduate training, we really are not accustomed to engaging in communication with people outside academia. Yet we are tasked with getting information from a variety of perspectives. Yet you've been able to either develop that knack, maybe it's a talent that you already had, where you can go ahead and understand the why of where by integrating the perspectives of those involved in tourism, in the administration of parks, those involved in serving in the parks, and then also those who are devoted to scholarship.
Well, thank you. I hope to. I've had very good relations with a large number of the National Park Service employees, including a string of so-called bureau historians and chief historians, and natural resource people. In fact, as soon as this is over, I'm expecting a call from the Washington Office Planning Department over some of the project that I'm starting to work on, which is going to challenge the idea that the Park Service is a grasping territorial aggressor and show that the agency, in fact, turns down the overwhelming majority of places that are suggested. So
That's
yeah,
interesting.
I'm still very active, and will remain so until whatever.
Well,
And,
I guess you find it really rewarding, for sure.
I do.
And, you have, whether you realize it or not, you've made a name for yourself really in historical geography, which is not embraced by as many practitioners of our discipline as maybe we would like to see. Certainly not as many as when Hilliard was around, a quarter century ago.
Well, when I first got my doctorate, I was the student member of the historical geography, whatever it was, specialty
Group, right?
Yeah. But and then at that time there were 550 members, and now I think it's, I don't know, just way down there. I'm still a member of that specialty group, but now there's another newer one, that Joe Weber at Alabama. So,
well, there's still really good work being done in historical geography. I was very pleased at the most recent AAG in Denver to see younger academics really take on the task of examining a number of fields within the realm of historical geography and doing it capably.
Yeah, there are some really good people coming up. This new specialty group on protected areas, parks and protected areas, saw a number of exciting new people there, and I've tried to help a couple of them already with contacts in the park system. Anyway, I never had graduate students. We didn't have a graduate program in my field, so I've sort of missed that. I did participate on a committee in the history department for a guy that did something on Great Smoky Mountains, but and I had some serious input there because he was starting to go down the hypercritical stage. And no, that's not how a historian works. You need to tell the story and let the readers come to their own.
But Alabama is interesting in that there are 4 institutions that have geography programs, I think. North Alabama, South Alabama, Jacksonville State, and the University of Alabama? Oh, 5, yeah.
Yeah, and there are other places that have geographers, or at least had them. There's a West Alabama, there's a Jacksonville State.
Right.
And they have had geographers in the past. I'm not familiar with whether those guys are all retired now, but I do, so I don't know what the programs are like now. But
sure. But what's interesting to me is there in Mobile, you're able to maintain a program through the ebbs and flows of the changing landscape of higher education.
Yeah.
And so in some way, the institution must see the discipline as being a valuable element in the liberal arts curriculum.
Well, we at South Alabama, there was a Department of Earth Sciences, and it's geology, meteorology, and geography. And there's a good deal of overlap, especially with the meteorologists. And the faculty, I believe now, I've been out for 10 years, but I think the faculty now is more or less balanced between the three.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe the meteorology program is almost a certain job aspect at the end of it. So I think it's doing pretty well. And there's a certain amount of give and take between geology and geography, but not as much as with meteorology. The meteorology students are the highest quality group because the program is rigorous as compared to the other two. But anyway, so geography. There are two new hires in geography there, or two since I retired anyway. So they seem to be very angry.
Well, and the location in Alabama is probably the best location to be there. I mean, on the Gulf Coast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's these two new guys. They're both interested in the Delta region above Mobile Bay. Of course, the famous entomologist E.O. Wilson was down here trying to get a national park established there because it is one of the most biologically diverse places on the face of the earth. And unfortunately, he spilled the beans to the media before we could negotiate with the people that hate the federal government. So it didn't go anywhere. But it's not something may still happen.
Sure.
Park Service has been after it for 25 years, and so we'll see.
Well, you've stayed on the Gulf Coast, which I suppose might have been kind of a surprise to you, and when you were in graduate school. And as I think about graduate school for a moment, you commented on Hilliard, and he must have been very influential and a very humorous fellow as well.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Told me he never forgot a joke. And I believe it.
But, when you were there, Fred Niffen was still alive, coming to the office almost every day. Did you have any interactions with him? Did you
have my committee.
Niffen was on your committee?
Yeah. That was the last grad student where he was on the committee.
He must have been in his 80s.
Almost, yeah, he was in his late 80s. I used to go to his office and sit on the stool.
Sit on the little stool there, yeah.
Yeah, he'd be sitting in his chair, and we would just talk. We would talk sometimes for 45 minutes.
He was really benevolent with his time,
Yes, he was.
really nice individual.
He spent a lot of time. He got his doctorate at Berkeley, of course. So he's talking about Berkeley in the 1920s. And I'm talking about, growing up there, taking an odd course at Berkeley and so forth, and talking about the Bay Area and how it's changed and all that. He told me an interesting story once. He went up and spent the better part of a winter in Alaska.
Right. He was panning for gold or something like that.
Panning for gold, right. And his partner left him there, and he was there by himself for like 4 months. Then he finally went back to, Anchorage or somewhere, and he was looking for a way back. And he didn't get on the ship he thought he had a ticket for. That ship was never heard from again.
And then we would not have had Niffen had it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a dose of reality hitting you right in the face.
Right. No, he was delightful. And it was out of the goodness of his heart that he added himself way after retirement to be on my committee.
Sure. Well, he must have thought highly of you. He really must have. And you had I mean, there were students that were in master's programs that I guess were there when you were there. Lisa Roberts was doing her
Yeah.
master's thesis on Burke's Garden, of all places, under
Yeah, she came
Hilliard,
from that area.
which was very interesting. So there was this strong, I got the impression there was a strong emphasis on historical geography, even among the master's students.
Oh, yeah.
You
Well,
know?
Craig Colton.
Right.
When I
Craig
started
also.
the doctoral program, Craig was in the master's program. And he went off and got his doctorate at Syracuse and wound up
Sure.
following a complex trail back to LSU itself.
It's an interesting story, for sure. And he is a giant in historical geography as well,
Absolutely.
I would say, you know.
Yeah. I'll tell you, people that I have worked with in historical geography, Craig, Bill Wyckoff, of course, Terry Young, these are really quality people.
They are
They are
indeed.
responsible, they are brilliant, they are hardworking. It's been a delight to work with.
I don't know how one can accentuate the importance of historical geography, really, because it seems somewhat esoteric in an esoteric discipline, the field. Yet the means of being able to analyze complex problems and develop viable solutions through that time-consuming, plodding research effort that one might engage in is quite valuable.
Yes.
And I'm
Go ahead.
hopeful that historical geography will maintain significance in our discipline and pick up momentum.
The historical perspective, or what some people like to call the longitudinal perspective on issues, is going to reassert itself. I was shocked to find out at the AEG that history departments are having a problem placing their graduates and maintaining their faculty numbers and so forth. But in the end, like the Greeks only had two disciplines. One of them was history.
Sure.
Classical Greece. It's never going to go away. And historical geography, environmental historians. I spend a lot of time dealing with environmental historians and been to their conferences a number of times, and they very much appreciate historical geography. And I like the people that I worked with, like my co-author on the Sequoia book. He was a PhD historian, but when I met him, he said, I should have been a historical geography. It's the history of a place. It's the biography of a place.
It is indeed. It's essentially documenting how a place ticks and why. And the only way to know how it ticks is to look at the past landscapes.
Right, exactly.
And as we seek to reconstruct those past landscapes, to understand the why of where, I think the world becomes richer for all.
Yes. And so it's always, I always, in my card now that I have historian and geographer, just because explaining historical geography to everybody else sometimes can be tedious, but the two, well, really, they were the two original disciplines, history and geography. Geography under various names, but at the time of classical Greece. But I used to tell my siblings,
Sure.
I can work anywhere in the world on any topic at any time. That gives me a lot of intellectual freedom.
And having that intellectual freedom and that autonomy is a great blessing. when we're not stuck inside a particular cubbyhole and cannot go outside those boundaries. We do have the opportunity to expand the breadth of our studies if we wish to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know?
it's a lot of people. Well, the way of things these days is to specialize, and it's gotten ever more potent in the fields. But there is always the fallback of getting the big picture.
Indeed. Well,
And
well, Larry, we have about a minute to go here, and I'm going to ask you to think about the path that you've trod in geography, and to think if there are suggestions, perhaps some advice you might have for students that might be interested in historical geography, or colleagues in the discipline, in terms of what you might recommend in today's changing landscape of higher education. Do you have any comments you'd like to share?
well, first I would like to say that the historical perspective should never be ignored.
Mm-hmm.
It explains so much. There's focusing only on the now without any kind of historical perspective is a disservice, because you're missing what it took to create the now. And so I think historical geography is extraordinarily valuable in that geography can handle both natural and human activities and resources and topics. And history gives you the long-term perspective to shape how things shape to get where they are now. I would say when I got on to the AEG in Denver, I went to a bunch of people standing around waiting, trying to get taxis. And I said, "Who's going to the AEG?" And these three women said, "We are." And so I said, "Can I share a taxi with you?" Because they had all kinds of gear. Anyway, so they said, "So what are you, GIS or remote sensing?" And I said, "Neither." I said, "Well, let's not, And then I find out that like 70% of the people in attendance were doing that either as a primary or secondary talent in the educational process. I see the worth of that. But let's not forget the big picture once again. That, human behavioral aspect, natural processes in the Earth system also need to be measured. The processes need to be identified and followed. I want geography to remain as wide as it's always been. And as long, going as far back into the past to explain processes. Things have taken place in the past that began and ended, but still have lessons for going to the future. That's the value of historical geography.
Larry, very prudent comments. I appreciate them, and I hope others find them valuable as well. It's certainly been a pleasure chatting with you for this half hour or so. I consider it a privilege to have spent this time with you. And I'm going to have to say so long for now, but I look forward to seeing you in Ventura at the APCG.
Oh, yeah, I'll be the keynote speaker there.
Excellent.
Yeah, they want me to talk because the last book was, the headquarters for Channel Islands is there.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to hear more about what you do in Africa. So
I'll be sure to share it with you. Anyway, once again, thank you so much, Larry. And this concludes today's session of Conversation with a Geographer. Take care, Larry.
Thanks. Bye-bye, Mike.